Great to have everybody here, and more than anyone who is here, it's great to have this guy here. I yield to no man in my respect and love. Yes, I use the word love for our next guest. He is the great John Rothmann.
Thank you, and I reciprocate fully.
Thank you,
And
sir.
I hasten to point out, you were just talking about birthdays with your previous guest, that I will, on March 2nd, be 75 years old.
Come on, everybody.
Which is hard for me to believe. But
you've gotten more out of every year
than
than most of us could ever dream. You're living your best life, John Rothmann. I think it's pretty exciting.
Why are you yelling?
Now, John Rothmann, turn your political focus toward a couple of things. First, the messages out of Michigan for Trump, Biden, and for the country.
The election of 2024 may be resolved by people who vote against rather than for. Very clear on the Republican side that Donald Trump was the overwhelming favorite in Michigan, but Nikki Haley nonetheless scored very well, 30% of the vote roughly. And that is very significant because a lot of those Republicans won't vote for him. And as for Joe Biden, there is a protest vote. There is no doubt about it. The uncommitted delegate count was good. And that primarily has to do with the Middle East. I would only remind you, I just got a book yesterday in the mail about Donald Trump being a great Zionist. And I can assure you, if they circulate that book in certain neighborhoods in Dearborn and in Detroit, he won't do nearly as well. So I think in the end, it's really a clear case of the fact that in this election it'll be close, but I still give the edge to Joe Biden.
The point you've just made is such an important one. It's an odd thing, and as I talk a lot, and I'm sure I'll talk more about how flawed our system is, but one of the flaws is you end up with this protest vote that, while being important on some level, I suppose, also doesn't really take stock of the fact that by protesting with your vote, you're throwing your vote to someone who's even worse. It's a weird
Look,
lack
in the
of
end,
political
Mark,
calculation that's being done.
In the end, any Arab or Muslim American or Christian Arab, for that matter, who would vote for a candidate for president who wanted a ban on people from the Middle East, a Muslim ban, I just don't see it. I think in the end, Joe Biden will carry Michigan. I think organized labor is going to stick with him. I think most Michigan residents will stick with him. And I think he'll win. I think he'll win by a bigger margin than he won last time.
And I'll just probe on that, and then I will move on. And
sure.
The probe would be, what if those people to whom you've referred, the protest voters, if they just lay out, John, how does that affect the result?
You mean stay home?
Yes.
I don't think they will. There are too many issues on the ballot of great consequence, including a Michigan senator's race, which is going to be critical. I have a feeling, look, what I'm learning is the people who are going to vote for Donald Trump are going to vote for him no matter what. The people who are going to vote for Joe Biden are going to vote for him no matter what. But there's also an anti-vote. There are more people who will vote against Donald Trump than there are people who will vote against Joe Biden. And look at the impeachment hearing that is taking place. Hunter Biden, even as we chat, is on the witness stand in a closed hearing. And the Republicans have nothing on Joe Biden. They were elected to accomplish certain things, and they keep saying, oh, we've got the evidence. And the evidence never turns up. I think that Joe Biden, if he's smart, and the Democrats will run as Harry Truman did in 1948 against that good-for-nothing Republican Congress. And by the way, let me make a quick note about Mitch McConnell. I didn't know that he was going to step out, but this morning in my commentary on my own podcast, Around the Political World with John Rothmann, I mentioned the fact, comparing McConnell and Chuck Schumer, that it is very clear the Republicans have a real challenge. Well, now they really do. They're going to have to choose a new leader. And clearly, that's going to be a fascinating change. After all, McConnell is the longest serving Senate leader. And it's going to be an interesting change. May I say, the person who may be most relieved is Donald Trump, because Donald Trump doesn't like Mitch McConnell, and I can assure you Mitch McConnell doesn't like Donald Trump. So it's a very interesting thing. And as to the aid bill for Ukraine, for Israel, and for Taiwan, who was the big proponent? It was Mitch McConnell. And so Speaker Johnson now is on very, very, very thin ice. because he's beholden to about 35 members of the House who belong to the Freedom Caucus, who toppled Speaker McCarthy and who now may well topple him. The impotence of the Republicans is the most interesting thing. And let me just point out one other thing. I know I've got a lot of questions, but I want to point this out. In 1952, the Republicans asked a question: who lost China? And of course, China was lost not by Democrats or Republicans, but by, well, too long a history lesson to go into. But we'll know if Ukraine falls who is responsible for the fall of Ukraine. Who lost Ukraine? The Republicans. And I think that is very clear. They have a real problem. They're going to have to address it. And they're caught between a rock and a hard place, between Trump and Speaker Johnson and their own conscience. So we'll have to see what happens.
But John says, Lori, you said in 2016 that Trump would lose the election, not the popular vote. Sorry, not counting on people waking up to Trump's grift and flaws. Well, you weren't alone in saying that he would lose the election. In fact, I think Trump thought he was going to lose the election.
Yeah, they had a concession speech all set. But I want to point out that Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote. But the difference is, and I really think this is important, Hillary Clinton neglected to go to states like Michigan and Wisconsin. She thought they were in the bag. The Democrats aren't working that way. I had lunch yesterday with a very old friend who took me out to celebrate my birthday and who paid for lunch, which was even nicer. But I can tell you that his comment was, it will all depend on voter registration. Jeff, if you're listening, I'm telling the world right now, Jeff said it's all voter registration. The Democrats have got to not only register people, but turn them out to vote. And you will note there is a real conflict in the Republican Party. There are some Republicans who are saying we have to do what the Democrats have done, and that is register voters and get them to the polls. We have to get mail-in ballots going. And then there are those who say, oh no, don't go to mail-in ballots. That will provide another corrupt election. So all I can say is my friend Jeff is 100% correct. By the way, he lives in California, but he has a place up in Truckee. And so he is going to work very hard in Nevada to ensure that Nevada goes for the Democrats.
That's a tricky state. That's a very important state. Absolutely right. This is an election that it's affected by so many different elements. And as you have noted often, the unshakable floor that Trump has is a real one. But the ceiling he has might be a real one also. And I think that's kind of what we're getting from some of these early primary results.
Yeah, I want to make a quick comment about in vitro fertilization. Donald Trump did the right thing, and I want to commend him for it on this program. He is in favor of in vitro fertilization. And that sets him at odds with some Republicans. But the most important single thing is it diffuses the issue as a national campaign issue. And I think the Republicans will have to step back on that one because if they're really pro-life, then so-called, then the creation of life is very important, and in vitro fertilization is critical. The fact that an embryo is viewed by some as a child is nuts. And by the way, Nikki Haley got stuck on that because she had both of her children, a boy and a girl, through in vitro, and she came out with a statement that an embryo is a child, and all of a sudden, she's caught in the conflict of who's right, who's wrong. So Nikki Haley lost on that issue, I think, because she wasn't clear, and then she had to retreat and go backward and forward. But
that's what she does. She does a two-step. She equivocates, and Trump doesn't care IVF. He doesn't give a damn. How dare you commend him on my show? All he's doing is he's simply playing to the chorus for political expedience. You know
that's
that, John.
Good. Don't you understand that is a good thing? Because now Republicans who support Trump cannot embrace the idea that in vitro fertilization is wrong. For women who rely, and men who rely on in vitro in order to have children, this is a great thing. And by the way, thank you for pointing out that I said something nice about Donald Trump. Remember, I did that with the Abraham Accords as well. A clock, my dear friend, even a clock that is stopped is right twice a day.
But John, in this case, they're already in Alabama working on legislation to work around the IVF ruling of the court, as you know. I mean, in other words, they know they've stepped in it. They know that this doesn't reflect really the people's wish. It reflects the wish of a hard right religious theology, if that's not redundant, legislatively that they pursued, and
No,
then they've got
in the judicial. This wasn't legislative. This was judicial. This is the Chief Justice of the Alabama State Supreme Court. Read his opinion. If he gave it as a sermon at church on a Sunday, it would be appropriate. But
yeah, it's all about the Lord. That's
Supreme
right.
Court.
Yeah.
Okay.
John, what's happening in San Francisco? We're going to lose Macy's now, which is a major retail outlet. The story of how Macy's emerged is a great one. I'm going to do it a little bit later in the show.
It's a wonderful story. The Chronicle did a great job. Look, the fall of Macy's is not the fault of Mayor Breed or the fault of any San Francisco politician. Macy's is doing this across the nation. They've decided to go upscale to appeal to people who can really afford to buy things. That was not the Macy's original thesis, which was to provide a store where anybody could shop. What does it mean for San Francisco? The same thing it's going to mean across the country. We are going to have to rethink how we use urban space. But let me tell you, I may be sometimes critical of Mayor Breed, but not on this one. She is trying to do the right thing, and I hope that all of the candidates for mayor unite behind the idea that this is not an individual mayor's fault. It is really the fault of where we are in every sense. I will miss Macy's, but you have the picture up. The white building on the to the left is the old I Magnin. And let me remind you, when I was a kid, when I went to the bathroom, when I was with my grandmother and my mother, we went to the bathrooms at I Magnin because they were so elegant. Gold-plated faucets and attendants and the whole nine yards.
That's a great story. I love that.
And I just read a wonderful book. James, if you're listening, he wrote a wonderful book on I Magnin some years ago. But the day of these kinds of dominant department stores are gone, at least for the time being. The interesting impact is on malls because people still go to malls. They want that social interaction. But let me remind everyone that Macy's, in its heyday, was a destination for shopping. And then if you were very lucky, you got to go to Blum's and have what my grandmother would call a nice chocolate soda or an ice cream soda. And it was a full day. I was standing, by the way, at Macy's Santa's Village. Where are kids going to go to have that kind of experience where Macy's took a whole floor and turned it into an enchanting Christmas theme?
Also the location of Macy's there on Union Square was just so special as well. I mean, like when you walked out of the store, it was, as you suggested, there were just so many wondrous places to knock around. It was a real different time.
But I don't blame the mayor. I can tell you that the mayor's race in San Francisco has become a billionaire's race. You know that I gave serious thought to running, and I really did, and had a lot of people behind me. But I realized, Mark, that I would have had to dip into the reserve of all of the people who are supporting you in order to raise the millions of dollars that I would have needed to run for mayor. And there was an article in the Chronicle last week that I'm sure you saw. Only billionaires can apply. And the simple reality is that to run for mayor, you have to have very, very deep pockets, and you have to be willing to go to your friends and hit them up. Well, that was something, frankly, I was not prepared to do.
Yeah, it's nor
was I prepared to ride on Mark Thompson's coattails about raising money.
Yeah. Well, I would have been happy to have you ride, but I understand the reluctance to put the bite on friends of yours. I remember getting a call from a friend of mine who was running for Congress, and he seemed to have all of these progressive ideas, and he seemed to be essentially sharing values with me, at least to in a pretty generic first blush. But I hadn't heard from him in years, and we went to high school together. And he said, hey, and then, you do the 6-minute warm-up dance. Maybe it was 7 minutes. And then finally he puts the bite on you. He goes, hey, I'm running. And, I know you and I think the same way. And I want to make a difference. And I want to represent, et cetera. And then you got to, write a check or not. But it's hard. I think it's hard to, make all those calls. And so much of politics is just that. It's got nothing to do with, underpinning political philosophies. It's shaking the trees for money.
And that also goes to the idea of public financing. Should we exclude people? One of the candidates for mayor has a single contributor who happens to be his mother who gave him $1 million. And Daniel Lurie's a very able fellow, but should you take $1 million from one donor in order to run for mayor? And that applies to London Breed, who is raising money prodigiously now. I remember the days when you couldn't get a city contract if you didn't pay to play. Or my dear friend, the late lamented Russ Walden, you could get your tax bill lowered if you sent him a Thanksgiving turkey or a wine or liquor, or gave him a vacation. Those
funny.
days are over. So the question of public financing is very interesting in terms of running, because normally, there is a limit in San Francisco. I think it's $500 is the cap for an individual candidate. So a husband and wife can give $1,000. But what do you do when you have individuals whose families have exceptional wealth who can give $1 million? Or in the case of, he has a brother who gave him $250,000 on the Prop E measure. So, I don't resent that. Understand. I believe.
Well, resent or not, John, it's not. I mean, having the system infected by this money it's a bad thing, isn't it?
I want to be clear about this, Mark. If people are going to give money, they should do it to the Mark Thompson program.
Thank you. That's I love it how John always brings it home like that.
Please put up the banner so people know where to contribute.
Put up the banner, damn it, Albert. My God.
Notice I'm taking down my own
asking
banner.
Albert to put up the banner.
Albert, thank you.
Wow.
Did you see that I'm asking him to take down the banner about my podcast?
Yeah, that's right.
In order to support yours.
A selfless act. Thank you. He is the great John Rothman. You can find him at Around the Political World with John Rothman, his daily podcast. Great takes on so many things.
Just say we now have 150,000 downloads. We continue to grow. And part of the reason that we have been so effective is because of the Mark Thompson program. And Mark's very generous wish that I join him every Wednesday, and that it is then replayed on our lines as well, just so people know. And I want to also thank Nikki Maduro, who does the same thing, and Kim McAllister, who is unfailingly supportive. And so
let's just keep it about me, if you could, John. Thank you very much.
Can I ever tell you about all the radio talk show hosts I know who are only slightly egomaniacal?
All right. John Rothman.
Isn't that a ding word, egomaniacal?
You are magic. Prodigious was a ding word. You used it, and I'll give you another one for egomaniacal. He's John Rothman. Find him here on Wednesdays and across the political spectrum.
Wait, before we go,
that? Yes.
You realize, well, next time here, Super Tuesday will have taken place.
I
know my birthday is important, but what's really important is March 5th. And we will be able to talk on Wednesday about how secure we will be in terms of the choices made on March the 5th. And may I add, I hope everyone votes here in California in the election of March 5th. We have a family meeting. There are 4 of us, my wife, myself, my 2 sons, and we fill out the ballot, sometimes arguing, but making sure we all vote. So vote, for heaven's sake.
Love it. Well said, sir. John Rothman, everybody. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.